things. You'll have an account with VistaQuote, obviously, and we'll be sending out emails to users. So Jacqueline, will start with you, as well as my name just went John, for those users. So just expect that email. Essentially what you're going to do is, sign in, set a password, and then you'll have access to VistaQuote. Now, at first, it's not going to have anything in there, but you're obviously more than welcome to click around and be curious, right? But the next thing we'll need to do on the technical side, Larry, is that we have to set up what's called a harvest account. You're probably going to need some insight from Jacqueline and the sales team as to how you're going to handle that. The harvest account is the email account that your incoming RFQs come from. So with ILS or PartSpace or the 145, you have sales at Western Air. That's where the incoming RFQs go to. And then we need to have an understanding of your internal processes of how those are routed currently. So there's a few different ways people do it. Sometimes they all go into one person. Sometimes, I don't know, with Corridor, maybe they go directly into Corridor. I don't know the answer to that question. But some companies have every salesperson with a secondary client in Outlook, and they'll have their own inbox as well as having visibility to the sales inbox. So, and then everybody's working out of that sales inbox and moving stuff to folders or routing rules or all of that stuff. So VistaQuote's going to take that hassle out of your life. We just need to understand now, if we could, and Jacqueline, hopefully you can give us some insight on how that's currently set up so that we can then give you best practices on how to set up the harvest email within VistaQuote.
Absolutely. So our OTC box, we actually are, it's kind of organized chaos. We are all in it at the same time. So we do run into a lot of times people quoting over top of each other or things not getting quoted. We are currently subscribed to ILS, Parts Logistics, which I don't know how long that'll be around for us, PartSpace, and Stock Market. And then we also have people send from their own personal email to there. So we're getting from our listing services, we're getting from our customers. And then we also have situations where people will send to an individual salesperson, and then they'll copy the OTC sales box, which is parts@westair.com. So it's a bit of organized chaos.
Right. Okay.
Organized chaos at the moment.
So your main inbox is that's correct, right?
Parts@westair.com. Yes.
Okay. So on that, because we are launching basically on a very limited, I guess what do you say, Stephen? I lost my words there. So I think you're just going to test it with a couple of users, yourself and John, and maybe one other person. I'm not 100% positive, without the ERP connection. So you're going to have like some of the capabilities of VistaQuote, and within those capabilities is going to be having to set up that harvest account. So the second question I have is, when you guys quote, do those quotes come from your personal email address, or does everyone quote out of the Parts at?
So two things. Also, I'm clicking around in it as we speak, and I'm realizing that some of the emails that come into this particular box, I had it put into my Outlook. So some people use it in a web browser, some people use it in Outlook. I had it put into my Outlook. And so it appears that we have from our listing services, another email address that it comes into, which is OCP at westair.com.
And that's P like Paul.
Charlie. Yep. October Tango Charlie Papa at westair.com.
Okay. And are they split, or how is that? I mean,
they're all filtering into
the parts@westair.com.
If we send it out of this email box, it comes from the parts@westair.com. We do have a drop down in here that I can switch it to come directly from my email address. But if we, unless you make the effort and switch it, then it comes out of the OTC box as a response.
Okay, so everyone has visibility of incoming and outgoing mail all the time.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
And Larry, maybe if you could just do some verification, sounds like you do have some different setups within the salespeople. So if you can just do some verification for us to let us know for sure that everyone is utilizing the email processing in a similar way. It sounds like to me right away out of the box, because you're only going to be implementing in a couple of users, that we set up another email address in its entirety, maybe VQRFQs at West Air, so that when Jacqueline and your other user that are going to be training on Vista Quote are going to work a quote or work an RFQ, that their process is going to be to forward it to the VQ at RFQ's email box, so that you guys don't lose visibility of your normal process. And we also don't want those two users to have to do work in Outlook and do work in Vista Quote. So it's going to act the same as if they were going directly to Vista Quote. It's just not going to mess up your day-to-day processing of RFQs. So Jacqueline, if you're going to work an RFQ, you're going to mark it red or do whatever you guys do in your inbox, but forward it to Vista Quote, which will allow you to start processing quotes out of Vista Quote and understand more how the system works.
Yeah, hopefully just for a little bit, and then you can get
Right.
all of your salespeople on Vista Quote and have full visibility of everything.
Now, it looks like in our OTC box, everything from ILS, stock market, pretty much any of our listing services, it doesn't come from an individual typing out parts at Western.
Right, sure.
It looks like those come to the OTC. Right, so you guys can see this.
Yep.
All right, so this is the OTC box. This is personal box. This is the OTC box here.
Yep.
And these are our listing services. And if you click on what these are, this is where it goes to. But if we were to, like, airport courier, that goes to our parts box. They send that directly to us, parts@wester.com.
Okay, and airport courier, is that a customer?
That's logistics. So
that's parts logistics.
Yep. So we'll actually get a lot in this box. Just everything that needs to go to everybody comes to this box.
Okay.
This is well, I guess now I'm second guessing myself.
Oh no, you're okay. Take a look.
Okay, so well, I guess everything in my box looks like it comes to otcp@wester.com. And Larry can probably speak to that. If someone types in parts@wester.com, is that going to show up in our system as otcp@wester.com? You're on mute. Oh, he's on the phone. Sorry.
One IT guy over to another. Yes, that would make sense. It's an alias that you have as a name. So you can have multiple aliases that connect to an email. Now, this sounds like it's still a distribution. You get this email, everyone else gets this email.
Yeah, so, okay. So we may need to discuss this just a bit further before we make the determination, but did you say I have your screen over my people's screen? You said Larry's on the phone.
Yeah, Larry's on the phone.
Okay. Well, I can communicate with him outside of this a bit once he's had the opportunity to really check the internal settings, and I need to know the client, which we could get, but let's just leave it for now, and I'll communicate, or Perry will communicate with Larry to really understand the back end client setup. So, but I have a good idea of what you're doing. So just
my question would be, obviously we get a lot of stuff in this box, and just implementing Vista quote in the early stages, is it possible to pretty much auto forward anything that comes from a listing service into Vista quote, leaving, the other in that box for everyone? So all of the listing services stuff, because that really, we go through and we probably no quote and get rid of about maybe 40 to 50% of that.
Right.
Brokers in Turkey asking for 30-cent parts.
Right.
You're not going to.
You're not going to quote those, right? For sure.
Yeah.
So we absolutely can set it up that way. The challenge that we would come across doing it that specific way, frankly, is that if you're working the RFQ in Vista quote, there isn't a way to automatically mark an inbox RFQ read or worked. So you're going to be duplicating your efforts there.
Gotcha.
Right. So you'll be working in Vista quote, working away. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What about just using flags? Like in Outlook, the flags in Outlook, that'd be an easy mark. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I completely understand what you're saying. So the idea would be, what's the easiest way to not disrupt your internal sales process?
Okay.
Whereby at the same time allowing the users that we are going to start with the implementation to do so without interrupting that general processing, right? So there's a couple of things that we can do to do that. So she could select 15 emails and forward all of them at once into the Vista Quote Harvest account, right? Whether those be no quotes or ILS or what only parts based. So we could set parts based up to go specifically to Vista quote, but that would mean, Jacqueline, that you're working every single parts base RFQ. So there's multiple ways to set it up, which is kind of why I'm throwing it out there right now, because you really need to keep in mind that you can do whatever you want with the email from Vista quote. So if we're harvesting from parts at West Air, you can mark it as left alone. You can mark it to move to a folder. You can mark it to delete. You can mark it to mark read. So you have lots of options of the action that's going to occur in Vista quote. But to save yourself from confusion and duplicate work, we really kind of want to think through initially, since you're only implementing part of the team, how you guys are not going to disrupt that process and create duplicate work for the people that are using Vista quote. And I don't mean to make it sound more cumbersome than it is, because it's really not. It's just, unfortunately, it's associated directly to what you're doing now, which obviously we don't have insight on that. So, and that may too be something that you guys want to bring John into that conversation, or I can have an additional conversation with John and Jacqueline and just kind of decide what the best path forward is. We will also harvest the other emails, meaning if they're not recognized from a listing service and they're going to parts and they're going to your parts at West Air or your OTCP email address, you will have visibility of those emails in Vista quote.
Okay.
So, and there's a lot of features coming forth with that particular process. They're trying to set up the harvest to say, if it says I need in a part number and a condition and a quantity, the company name, that we will harvest it just kind of by recognition of those particular elements. Again, that's something that's in development. I can't make any promises of when that's going to happen, but right now you can work all of the emails, regardless if they're from a listing service or not, from Vista quote. Okay. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. I just kind of wanted to get your wheels spinning on that.